Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that in 1786, Thomas Jefferson created the Virginia Statute for religious freedom so that the citizens of Virginia had the right to practice their religion without being jailed or killed? Learn how, 3 years later, James Madison used religious freedom as the basis for the First Amendment and as a type of legal architecture for the 5 fundamental freedoms of religion, speech, press, assembly, and the right to petition as found in the Bill of Rights.
Today, we are tracing the architectural blueprint of one of the most fundamental liberties in the American system, religious freedom.
And we're doing this by looking at a very specific day.
Exactly. We're diving into the history behind National Religious Freedom Day, which happens every January 16th. Now, that's not just some random date on the calendar. It marks this singular pivotal moment in 1786 in Virginia that really set the course for the entire country.
It really did.
But to get why that day was so revolutionary, you first have to understand the stakes. I mean, what was life actually like for someone in the colonies who didn't follow the officially established church?
Well, our sources are pretty clear on this. It wasn't just a fine or a social slap on the wrist.
No, not at all. People faced imprisonment, financial ruin, or, and this is terrifying, even death.
Just for their private beliefs.
So our mission today is to unpack how we got from there, from a capital offense to a protected foundational right. We're tracing that path from a single state law all the way to the bedrock of the U.S. Constitution.
And it's such a timely deep dive. The whole point of observing this day isn't just to look back at history. The goal is to protect and promote the free individual expression of religion right now.
It's an active thing.
It's a very active thing. What's so interesting is that the statements around this day, year after year, they all stress this. One source we looked at from a 2021 presidential statement put it perfectly. It said the work of protecting religious freedom for people of all faiths and none is never finished.
Never finished. I like that. So let's unpack those foundations. Where do we even begin?
I think you have to start with the motivation. The reason so many people came here in the first place.
The context of flight.
Exactly. Flight from persecution.
Right. So we all know the story, the Pilgrims. They were separatists from the Church of England. They land in Massachusetts in 1620. And the primary reason for that incredibly dangerous voyage was to escape a system in England where the state church, well, it dictated everything. It enforced conformity.
And it used the power of the state to do it. That trauma, that direct experience of conform or flee, it just deeply shaped the thinking of the next generation.
Founders.
The founders.
Yeah.
They didn't just stumble on this idea of religious liberty. They understood on a visceral level that respecting individual belief wasn't just a nice idea. It was a critical guardrail against the kind of tyranny they had just escaped.
And that realization, it all comes to a head in one incredible piece of writing.
Oh, absolutely. The Virginia Statute for Establishing Religious Freedom.
A revolution on paper.
It really was. And it was Thomas Jefferson's brainchild. He was steeped in the Enlightenment, in this idea of the individual conscience. He actually drafted it way back in 1777.
1777. But it wasn't passed until
January 16th, 1786. It took almost a decade. There was intense, organized opposition from the established Anglican Church.
Okay, let's pause on that. 9 years, that's a huge political fight. Why was it so tough? What did this statute actually change for the average person in Virginia?
It changed everything. First, and this is the most dramatic part, it completely eliminated state persecution for your beliefs.
So the threat of jail time, or worse, for being, say, a Baptist or a Quaker.
Gone. It turned what could have been a capital offense into a protected right overnight.
Wow.
But the second part is what really cemented its revolutionary status. It cut off the government's financial support for the Church of England.
So no more mandatory taxes to the church.
Precisely. Before this, it didn't matter what you personally believed. Part of your taxes went to support the Anglican clergy, their buildings, everything. Jefferson's statute severed that link completely.
So it's not just freedom of worship, it's freedom from forced subsidy.
Exactly. It's economic liberty tied directly to spiritual liberty. That's why it was so contentious. Jefferson famously said that forcing someone to pay for ideas they disbelieve is sinful and tyrannical.
Okay, so that's the monumental state victory. But how does this one Virginia law become the blueprint for the entire nation?
Because it was always intended to be the blueprint. Our sources make it clear. The statute proved that you could have a stable, functioning society with lots of different denominations, all without a state church or mandatory funding. It was the proof of concept.
And this is where James Madison enters the picture.
Yes. Madison was the one who really championed Jefferson's bill in Virginia. He saw that victory and knew it could be scaled up. So when he sat down to draft the Bill of Rights in 1789, what did he put first?
Religious freedom.
The very first thing in the First Amendment.
Now, for anyone listening, this is where we get into the legal architecture of it all. It's not just one idea. The First Amendment actually has two distinct clauses about religion, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And understanding the difference is key. They work together, but they do different things.
So what's the first one?
The first is the Establishment Clause. You could think of this as the direct descendant of Jefferson's fight against those church taxes.
Okay.
It basically says the government cannot establish an official national religion. It can't favor one over another. It mandates government neutrality.
And the second part?
That's the Free Exercise Clause. This one is the descendant of the Pilgrims' flight from persecution. It guarantees that the government can't stop you from practicing your faith or from having no faith at all.
So one clause says the government can't prop up a religion, and the other says it can't tear one down.
A perfect summary.
What's so fascinating to me, though, is that those two clauses, establishment and free exercise, they can sometimes seem like they're in conflict.
They can.
Mm-hmm.
And that tension is the central balancing act in all of religious liberty law. It's an ongoing conversation. Well, think about it. If the government goes too far to accommodate someone's free exercise of religion, it might look like it's endorsing or establishing that religion.
Violating the Establishment Clause.
Right. But if it's too strict about not establishing anything, it could accidentally trample on someone's right to freely practice their faith. So the courts are constantly trying to find that point of equilibrium.
It's about protecting everyone's liberty without giving anyone a government stamp of approval.
That's the goal. It ensures that this incredibly diverse religious landscape we have isn't forced into some one-size-fits-all mold by the government.
So we've traced the path. We have the Pilgrims in 1620, Jefferson's Statute drafted in 77 and passed in 86, and then Madison's First Amendment in 1789. The history is there. Which brings us back to the big question. Why are we still talking about this? Why is this work, as you said, never finished?
Because the law only gives you the frame. Society has to live it out. You see, the sources define religious freedom as more than just a legal concept. It's a philosophical one. It's about affirming the dignity of a person as they search for truth. It's about protecting the conscience.
And if you lose that protection of conscience,
then real diversity collapses. You just end up with a forced conformity, the very thing the founders were trying to prevent. That's why this freedom is described as being critical to the health of a diverse society.
which leads directly to the calls to action that are associated with this day. It's not enough to just know the history.
Right, you're expected to uphold the liberty.
The sources lay out 4 key actions for every citizen. The first, of course, is to get educated on the issue, which, well, is what we're doing right now.
Exactly. But the next 3 are where it becomes practice. You're encouraged to actually live your beliefs, to practice your faith, and just as importantly, to defend the religious freedom of others.
Others, not just your own group.
That's the critical part.
Yeah.
And that defense can be online, in your community, wherever.
And that leads to the 4th step, which feels like the real social contract here. Acting with tolerance and respect toward people who do not believe what you believe.
That is perhaps the most essential piece for a healthy society. The legal clauses, they protect you from the government. But tolerance and respect, that protects the right socially between citizens.
So even if a practice is legally protected, if the social environment is hostile,
The right starts to erode. A right on paper doesn't mean much if people don't internalize the principle behind it. The spirit of the law matters as much as the letter.
So let's wrap this up. The core takeaway, the through line here is, the need to escape persecution drove the Pilgrims. That memory fueled Jefferson to finally end state-sponsored religion in Virginia in 1786. And that victory gave Madison the model for the First Amendment's 2 guarantees in 1789.
The Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause.
Exactly. The whole structure was built to recognize the individual conscience, which created the space for a truly diverse society to even begin to form.
It gave people the freedom to pursue truth without fearing the government. So we know religious freedom protects the conscience of every person. But here's something to think about. If the law itself takes care of separating church and state, how does your personal daily act of showing tolerance to someone who believes differently from you? How does that fulfill the spirit of the Free Exercise Clause? When does simple disagreement become a kind of social ban on someone else's belief? And how do you ensure your own commitment to tolerance stops that from happening? That, I think, is the question that defines our ongoing work.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.